So while we are waiting for everyone to join, it would be interesting to know in which city you are. If you can just punch the name of your city in the chat box, just to get a sense from Beijing to Vancouver. That's a world tour, huh? From north of Finland, Inari, to south of Africa.
Wow, pretty amazing.
So you see, we could spend hours watching this stream of cities running. Welcome Oslo, welcome Mexico, Beirut, Philadelphia, Tallinn. Wow, that's great. Doha, La Paz, Cape Town, Toronto, Shanghai. Hi, Siddhant.
Okay, I'm going to take the floor now. The town hall clock is chiming in the background where I am. Hello and welcome to Design Influences on what we consider an auspicious day in several ways, being the 21st of the 1st of 2001. And to reiterate, as people log in, let me welcome you. My name is Regitze Hess, and I'm the co-chair of Design Influences, together with Alok Nandi. And we are, let's say, the driving forces of Design Influences, which is happening on behalf of the Design Declaration Steering Committee. We have a great lineup today of over 24 voices representing just as many organizations from over 20 different cities worldwide. Johannesburg, Pretoria, Amman, Vancouver, Edmonton, Helsinki, Tel Aviv, New York, Puerto Rico, Zurich, Mutu, Washington, DC, Dhaka, Shanghai, San Francisco, Porto, Nantes, Skagen, Montreal, Brussels, and Copenhagen, just to mention those voices you'll be hearing today. I may have not gotten all of your locations correct because everyone's sort of moving a bit around with retreating to places in these times. But I warmly welcome our audience who are zooming in from even more places around the globe to keep on sharing in the chat where you're zooming in from. It's quite interesting to see. Collectively, we are a confluence of design interests, design advocates, design activists, design influencers across time, place, scale, and scope. I'd like to thank you very much for coming together here today. Again, a warm welcome from my side, Regitze Hess. And now let me give the mic to Alok Nandi, my co-chair. Alok, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Regitze. Thanks everyone for joining us for Design Influences. This session will keep us busy for 2 hours, and it will be 2 hours very dense. As Regitze mentioned, we have 20 plus speakers. we have 2 hours of points of view, which will be shared from different parts of the planet. And we wanted to have this moment to get a sense of what is happening today, now, from all your viewpoints, so that we get a kind of subjective, objective mapping of the emotions, what I would call the designerly emotions. Now, if we step back in 2017, 22 organizations signed the declaration in Montreal. And this is, I would say, one of the next phase in the journey. So those signatories gathered more than 700 organizations who were represented, and design in 2021, because we are already in 2021, has such an important role to play, which was already highlighted in the design declaration in 2017, that we felt that it was important to get us all together. After the declaration signed in Montreal, a small group of organizations continued to work behind the scene, and this is one of the results of this work. So I would just like to mention the 6 organizations who were busy and who are busy behind the scenes. MEDEA, Bureau of European Design Association; CUMULUS, the Association about Education; icoD, IFHP, IxDA, and World Urban Campaign. Those 6 organizations are listed on the website, designdeclaration.org, and you'll have all the information about the steering committee. The program of today is listed on designdeclaration.org/design-influences, where you'll have the list of all the speakers, and /program will give you the program of this session, which has been clustered in 3 units. And you'll discover these 3 units: the influencers, the influencers, and influencing. And each of these units will have 2 co-moderators, and each speaker will have 4 minutes to share the viewpoints. So we'll be under, I would say, time pressure. And our role, Regitze and myself, is try to make sure that the tempo is maintained. So dear speaker, keep a watch also and try to stick to the 4 minutes. And after that, you'll be smoothly transitioned, and the next one will take the floor. If there is any burning question, we suggest you use the chat to express your question. We'll record them. We didn't foresee this as an interactive moment where people would answer to questions, but we are happy to take them and keep them and record them and think about how we'll come and feedback. So see this as 20+ viewpoints who are shared to you, and we'll accumulate that, and we'll see in the near future how we'll make use of that. Time is flying, and we'll move to our first set, where we'll have Eija, Salmi, and myself who will be co-moderating. That session is Design Influences. Eija, you wanna ping and share a few words before we give the floor to our first set of speakers, because exceptionally the first speakers will be a set of 2 speakers speaking out of South Africa. Eija.
Thanks, Alok, for inviting me to have a say. Important from the CUMULUS point of view, education and research follow what is taking place, not only as such, but connecting with all others. So thanks for mobilizing CUMULUS to contribute today. I guess that's enough.
So let's give the floor to Herman and Desiree so that you can share with us some insights from South Africa.
Thank
Desiree,
you, co-host,
your mic.
for invites. You can hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you to our hosts for inviting the Design Education Forum of Southern Africa to represent the voices of our members from higher education institutions in our region. We posed this webinar's questions to our members and received several responses with valuable input. We will publish an in-depth paper on this, all the responses we received on our website in due course. I will briefly reflect on the influences on design at large, and Desiree will, our current president-elect, will report on the design education specifically. The social political circumstances of our region will be one of the most significant influences on design. The ever-growing divide between rich and poor has reached the point where government policies and plans to address this issue is no longer keeping citizens complacent. The COVID-19 pandemic has further thrown the spotlight on the harsh realities of the social justice issues we face. People from all walks of life realize that they have the power to change their circumstances, and we can see clearer than ever that design will be one of the vehicles that will be an enabler for very practical societal change. There is no more time for strategies and planning. Now is the time for doing, making, and creating the change that is needed to address social ills. Through the quest for social justice, we see that design will be democratized, allowing all to benefit from the fruits that design can bring. Almost all the responses we receive from our members make reference to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the design industry and design education. We have seen the devastating effect of the pandemic on entrepreneurs and students of design. Without a doubt, this once-in-a-century pandemic will influence design in ways that we have yet to discover. I will now hand over to Desiree to further elaborate on the influences we identified on design education specifically.
Thank you, Herman. I am addressing influences on design education from a context-specific point of view. However, having said that, it might be similar in other regions of the globe, and hope it will spark some interest. We cannot ignore the changing world we work in and everything that has an impact on that changed world. The most profound of the past year has been the world health crisis. In the recent academic year, we as design educators were confronted with the harsh realities that the pandemic brought, and that the need to transfer tested knowledge virtually happened at the drop of a hat. What it also brought was the context-specific reality of the student group that was in front of us, the tough reality of where and how our students live, the lack of infrastructure in many parts of our country, the unfortunate, uncomfortable financial reality of COVID of the last year and the influence it will have on education in years to come, what universities needed to do to accommodate the changed way of teaching and the financial unsustainability thereof, the deepening divide between the students that have and those that have not. In addition, as mentioned by my colleague, for both educator and student, the effect of the loss of comfort of the classroom was profound and had both a positive and a negative effect. So, where lies the challenge? Design education has changed radically. What we taught and how we taught design in the decades before 2020 does not necessarily fit anymore. In this changed and changing world, what influences a changed design program? Knowledge, redesign a curriculum, rethink what we do, and more dialogue. Now more than ever, we need to strengthen how design can contribute to the greater good, how design is the change maker, and how design has to impact social and environmental sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you, Desiree. Thank you, Herman.
It's my turn. We'll move over to next speaker, Essam Abu-Awad, representing Middle East Design Educators Association. And he has guaranteed to speak about trends impacting design communities and education in the Middle East. Thanks, Essam. Please join us.
Essam, your microphone.
Thank you very much. I'm talking on behalf of all the universities who are members in our association in MEDEA. Really, everything has changed since the outbreak of coronavirus, which has globally created several medical, economical, and educational implications. Like most of the affected sectors in the world, the pandemic of coronavirus has forced us in design, education, and design industry to cope up with a sudden changes, find immediate solutions, and develop creative long-term methods, thus replacing the traditional face-to-face learning with the distance learning was a crucial step to sustain the process of education in the Design Education Center. Since distance learning has been considered to be an optimal solution to guarantee the sustainability of education for students at all levels, the use of technology has become a must and a key aspect of student success. However, making distance learning a successful experiment was not an easy task due to different reasons regarding bad internet connection, student lack of ICT knowledge, lockdown, and the variety of e-learning readings among universities. Thus, when we began to implement the plan of distance learning at design faculties, we faced some obstacles when some students were not able to join the university on 18th October 2020. Some were infected and some of them were not able to re-enter Jordan. So we adopted hybrid education. Moreover, there were additional burdens of online as well, Wi-Fi restrictions and software problems that affected the performance of students and their evaluations later on. These challenges provoked an important question, which is how can we turn such difficulties into successful learning? Teamwork between faculty members and governance at the universities has played an essential role in creating a comfortable environment for students through the flexibility of directing and controlling the educational process remotely. Teamwork has also extended to include the relationship between faculty members and students, where both of them know their duties and rules. For example, faculty members should afford students with clear learning content, which should be clearly analyzed and well structured. It should also be presented with different presentation methods and approaches. A student, on the other hand, should be fully prepared, active, creative, and depend on themselves when searching for specific information. And in addition to teamwork, we believe that the aim of online and learning is more than uploading and downloading videos or links. There are specific pedagogies and practices that help to make online learning effective, mainly through creating a studio culture. Therefore, implementing an emulate experience of being in a studio has found more solutions to studio courses, especially for first-year students, and it has enhanced their manual sketching processes. Design industry is not far from design education, just like any creative services. And as we go further into the pandemic, this sector has been badly affected. For example, design spending cuts led to a drastic loss of creative jobs in design. Due to the pandemic of coronavirus, we were not able to have an active trade life. Maybe we will not need marketers, designers, and the recruiters of such jobs. In a nutshell, both of design education and design industry have been through dramatic changes due to coronavirus and other reasons. Such changes will not end quickly. However, positive outlook to the futures is still valid, and the changes in a controlled environment may stand as a foundation of good design practice. Design has the best chances to impact and improve equality when exercised early. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Essam. Thanks, Essam, for zooming in from Middle East. And we'll move to the next speaker, who's in the far west, Johnathon Strebly. He's the president of icoD. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Alok. And I'd like to take a moment just to thank the steering committee for organizing this event and inviting me to participate. The International Council of Design, icoD, is the largest international organization representing national professional designer associations and also includes design educational institutions and design promotion entities. In recent years, icoD has been going through a very substantial transformation, as befitting an organization established in 1963 and in light of the dynamic changes in the design world. We have undertaken an enhanced multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary approach, recognizing the complexity of current design processes and impacts. What are the greatest influence currently affecting design from the icoD perspective? We recognize the need to examine what it means to be a design professional and to ask, what is professionalism? The design disciplines are relatively young, born of the Industrial Revolution, a relatively recent event. Other professions, medicine and law, for example, have had many centuries to develop professional ethos and standards, and have successfully established the resulting social status and influence. The design professions have yet to establish that internal cultural infrastructure. Designers, if they are true professionals, have special roles and responsibilities in society, especially as designers have become critical drivers of change impacting all aspects of modern life. Designers play a central role in economic development, currently applied through unbridled consumption, with enormous social, cultural, and environmental implications beyond the direct economic impacts. The Montreal Design Declaration, with which icoD is proud to have been intimately involved from the beginning, proclaims the critical role of design is to create a world that is environmentally sustainable, economically viable, socially equitable, and culturally diverse. That all people deserve to live in a well-designed world. And inspires designers, too long the servants of producers, to better serve humanity as the ambassadors of the end users, the citizens of the world. These are powerful words that have permeated icoD thinking in recent years and heavily impacted our deliberations on the implications of professionalism. In particular, we recognize that designers must take the lead in redefining design and designing in our terms, and circulate these ideas within our own professional community, including educational institutions, as well as conveying these ideas to the general public, our communities. Only in this way can we change how design impacts the world. In particular, we recognize that just as design has a critical role in defining the future, we are very much complicit in the many problems consumption, supported by designers, has created in the present. In order to be part of the solution, we have to understand that we designers are part of the problem. This thinking has caused icoD to revamp our code of conduct, reflecting declaration principles, and establish an ongoing discussion within our community. The present health crisis has also influenced our thinking. The crisis illustrates many of the areas of design impact on our world, and in particular, the impact of industrialization, urbanization, and consumption. Designers are critical cogs in all these activities. To summarize, the greatest current influences on design are the need for enhanced professionalism, understanding that every design action has social, cultural, environmental, and economic implications, and designers have an obligation to act collectively balancing the needs of the individual with the wider needs of humanity. The design declaration process, including this event, provides us with an important opportunity to act in concert with others. Thank you again for this opportunity.
Thank you,
Thanks, Johnathon.
Yeah, Alok, you did it. Excellent. I'm happy to introduce, to speed up and allowing us to discuss. Next speaker comes from US, Global Networks, Global Challenges, Masterplans and Sustainable Cities and Local Contexts by Eleanor Mohammed. CAP and GBN are her associations.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Before I get started, and in contribution to Canada's Indigenous reconciliation efforts, I'm pleased to recognize that I am speaking to you from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, the traditional treaty territory of, Treaty 6. It's important that we respect the histories, languages, and cultures of all of Canada's First Peoples, whether they be First Nation, Métis, or Inuit descent, and appreciate that their presence continues to enrich Canada's vibrant communities. Collectively, Canadians are all treaty people. My perspective today is on behalf of the Commonwealth Association of Planners and the Global Planners Network. Collectively, we represent over 100,000 planners from around the world. I think the question is interesting for today's session from the get-go. What are the greatest influences on design? What is versus what should be or must be the greatest influence? Today's built form in urban design is very much influenced by the implementation or absence of government planning policies and the costs associated with development, land, and available materials. There is a continual push-pull factor between political desires, public good, professional capacity, and available financial capital. Wealthier cities have more forward-thinking, resilient design, and poorer cities have informal, unpermitted design as they struggle with the pressures of rapid urbanization and the negative impacts of climate change. Now, if we focus on what should or even must be the greatest influence on design, rather than what is, I believe that it must be first, the necessity and ethical responsibility to plan and design in the public interest, which therefore must include equity, diversity, and inclusion. A human-centered approach with a focus on improving everyone's quality of life, health, and lived experience, regardless of gender, race, religion, location of birth, social standing, or sexual orientation. I note this first because it intersects with all of the influences on design. The second greatest influence on design should be the immediate need for action in addressing climate change and building economic, social, and environmental resilience, incorporating adaptation and mitigation measures into everyday life, the built form, our communities, and cities. Sustainability cannot just be a nice to have any longer. Planning and design can influence human behavior from the implementation of green infrastructure and transportation to changing our preferences away from fossil fuels to the basics of localizing citizen services. Third, and finally, all planning and urban design should be influenced by and take advantage of emerging technologies. Technology and associated innovation needs to be leveraged in planning processes, government policies, built form, design, and cities. With COVID-19, we witnessed how we can adapt and change our behaviors with technology almost overnight, which has brought into question how we use and design cities and communities. There are so many technology and data opportunities and improvements offered to and through design. We need to break free from the notion and fear associated with entrenched behavior of that's the way it's always been done. It's a new day and a new year. Thank you for inviting the Commonwealth Association of Planners and the Global Planners Network to participate in today's important summit. It is a pleasure to spend time with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Eija speaking here. I made some pickups based on all presentations. It's nothing new. We have massive responsibility. We have to do solutions by design together, all stakeholders. What made me be interested in what Herman said is the to-do thing, not to always focus in strategies. Of course, they go hand in hand. Dialogue was strongly underlined. Question who rules, government, cities, is it the private sector owning a university or any other stakeholder? What is the funding? Questions of IT, anything is burning around human resources. Solutions, we have to find them and together and share them to strengthen the impact what takes place on this planet. It was interesting also what Johnathon said, that circulate and think about what is professionalism. And from the point of view of education and research, I warmly welcome strong dialogue on that and then developing it together. Alok, would you like to add something from your pickups?
Thanks. I would suggest we move to the next set, and you have done a sharp summary, and we are running smoothly, just on time, thanks to all the speakers keeping their tempo. So thank you very much already, all of you who have spoken. We will move now to the next series. What I can just quickly highlight is that it is so dense that each of us will need to review a number of insights and think about the next phases, as Johnathon, you're suggesting. So let's take these moments as moments for triggering actions in the future, as we are so many of us together around the same kind of virtual table. So we'll pass the baton to David and Päivi, who will take care of the second set. And thanks already to all of you who have contributed. David, the floor is yours. Päivi, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Alok. David will start, and I will then wrap up the next speaker. So go ahead, David.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Päivi, and thank you, everybody. It's really good to interact with all of you again and see so many friends, old and new. It's been my privilege to represent icoD on the Design Declaration Steering Committee in recent years as we drive the design declaration process forward. Issuing the Montreal Design Declaration, signed by 22 international design organizations and international entities, represented an important historical milestone, because for the first time, design disciplines from across the spectrum sat down together to speak collectively, vastly magnifying the impact of our voices. It's important to note, as Alok mentioned earlier, that the Declaration Annex lists over 700 national design-related entities in 90 countries, representing millions of designers. It's appropriate to acknowledge that collective power when framing this session on design influencing. How is design influencing the world around us? Design, of course, more than merely influences the world around us, as almost everything around us is designed, and too often poorly designed. Design, and more importantly, designers, in fact, very much not only influence, but determine the realities of the world around us. Not only do designers determine the physical and material characteristics of the visual, material, spatial, and experiential environments, but very importantly, in so doing, designers play overwhelmingly dominant roles in determining social, cultural, environmental, and economic realities. Our true influence should not be measured in merely material and visual terms, but in abstract terms that ultimately determine human behavior. Consciously or not, designers in fact determine emotional and cultural stereotypes and concepts of desire, success, prosperity, and happiness. These are very powerful forces, and they burden designers with exceedingly important responsibilities. So designers have enormous influence on the modern world in every design decision they make, no matter how mundane. This has critical implications in defining what it means to be a professional. Just as we are able, if acting professionally, to ensure a better future, we must recognize that we are very much part of the present problems, as designers are complicit in all aspects of industrialization, urbanization, and unfettered consumption. To be part of future solutions, we have to realize that we are part of the present problems. We're meeting at a very critical time. The international health crisis that has brought the world to a temporary standstill illustrates the delicacy of our situation. This is a wake-up call. But I suggest that it is really critical that we see this crisis for what it is. This is not a virus crisis caused by bats. This is a human crisis, reflecting the failure of humanity to recognize the implications of industrialization, urbanization, and overconsumption, all of which involve designers. Solving the virus crisis alone is not the solution. That would be wasting a crisis and an opportunity. The world must take advantage of the opportunities presented by this crisis to approach needed solutions comprehensively, addressing very basic underlying issues, all of which are design related. The influence of design is overarching and total. The Montreal Design Declaration well describes the role of design. It in fact anticipated the current challenges raised by this crisis. To ensure that the influence of designers is positive, we must act to redefine design professionalism. In this session, we've invited each speaker to address how design influences the world around us from their perspective. And our first voice will be my friend Mariana Amatulo of CUMULUS. So Mariana, good to see you, and I invite you to make your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David, and it is lovely to join all of you today from New York City in the United States. And I want to congratulate the steering committee for the immense work and preparation that has brought us here together today. And of course, recognize my colleague Eija, Salmi, and Alan Lindberg from CUMULUS joining, and Christian Guélerin, our honorary president from CUMULUS. So I wanted to start today really with a couple of reflections. The first one is around the word, the concept of influence and influencing that brings us today together. And of course, we know that influence literally means asserting one's perspective and asserting and exerting change. But influencing, of course, if we turn it around, is also about provoking change by having empathy and understanding others, understanding goals of others, and being able to harness that understanding into change, anticipating as well aspirations. And this aspirational quality and power that we see in design as a knowledge domain and also as a profession is at the core, I believe, of what we can focus on as we think about the circles of influence of design education, design research, and the design professions in our contemporary world. All of the preceding remarks have, in no uncertain terms, today, pointed to the contemporary complexity in which we have to operate. We know that design today is challenged by being able to seize upon that complexity and operate in a networked and systems view of the world. And this is playing out, of course, in how design influences the world of business and the world of the social. And of course, one of our largest crises that we are facing as a planet, the climate crisis. What I see as a design educator and as a design researcher in terms of the power of design to influence is connected very much to the cognitive power of design, which has to do with this notion that I opened up with, this notion of empathy, so provoking change through empathy. The second notion being creativity. The third one, the opportunity to engage with aesthetics and in a multi-sensory way, understand the world around us. And the other two dimensions are around connecting multiple perspectives and complexity. And the fifth one being navigating ambiguity. The COVID crisis, which as we have heard, has not only been a public health crisis, but a social, cultural crisis as well, has taught us that we need these 5 ways of understanding and engaging with the world. And I believe that it is through these 5 sort of entry points that we can hope to see more influence of design and of the next generation of designers that we are educating all around the world in our institutions. So I will close with a word of hope. As someone now in the United States, we just saw a very important moment, I believe, historically, of how influence had been harnessed in a very divisive way in this country and throughout the world. And now with a change of guard, there is hope for sure that we will see influence again uniting us in this country politically. But I would like to say that I believe the mission of this work that we're all part of with the Design Declaration is also one around unity and the idea that we can come together through greater understanding through our differences and change. So thank you very much. Congratulations to the steering committee, and it's my privilege to join you this morning out of New York City. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mariana. And all of us are happy with the news, I think, of recent days. Our next speaker is Jessie Grimes from SDN, Service Design Network. Jessie, welcome, and I invite you to make your presentation.
Hi, thank you. So I'd like to take this opportunity just to share my thoughts on how service design is fulfilling this concept of design influencing the world around us. And again, from my perspective at the Service Design Network. And I'd like to begin by saying that I think my answer to the question today is much different than it might have been just 1 year ago because of the events that we've seen taking place in that year. Back then, I think service designers were much more driven by our own ongoing push to be recognized as a discipline. And it was really about using our influence to have our value recognized by more and more people. Our aims were often about getting a seat at the table and creating impact. And our focus was very much on the organizations in which we work, both in the public sector and the private sector. And while I'll say that that drive will always exist, I think we've made really great strides. As an organization, we're starting to see that what we've almost achieved is our stated goal of making service design the new normal. And it's a feeling of accomplishment that I think our still young community very much deserves. But what I've seen happening since then, again in the last year, I think is even more promising. We're not sitting still and staying satisfied, but we're looking, more and more of us are looking ahead to see how service design can exert more positive influences outside organizations and towards even more ambitious ends. And the 2 specific influences I'd like to discuss briefly are how we're having an impact on the areas of sustainability and social justice, diversity, and inclusion. I'll start with the first, and that was just 1 year ago in March 2020, the SDN's president, Professor Birgit Mager, convened a summit in Germany, and it was focused on the future of service design. And sustainability was one of the 13 themes that our participants co-created. And I've seen that theme take on even more urgency in the community since the pandemic began. And of course, the design community has long recognized the role we need to play in addressing challenges like climate change. And it's really nice to see Simon is back with us today, and he was with us from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation at our last in-person meeting. But I've seen since then more and more service designers are pushing to make those concerns about sustainability at the very core of their design decision-making, and considering, for example, the natural environment as an equally important stakeholder alongside society and economic considerations. And more service designers are building the SDGs into their design ethos. I've even seen a thought leader in our service design world with a short and succinct message in his email signature these days, which says, whatever you're doing right now is probably not as important as addressing climate change. The second area which I think service design is having an influence on the world around us is, again, starting directly within our own community, is about social justice, diversity, and inclusion. The last year has seen our community join this global movement to recognize and attempt to right systemic injustices to parts of our society. And we've had volunteers within our community step up to address this topic. They're beginning by focusing on our organization, on the SDN, and soon they're going to set their sights on supporting service designers in our community who have already seen the importance of this topic and who are ensuring that the services we design are inclusive, that we as a community are inclusive as well. Our growing presence as service designers and the impact we're able to achieve to design more just services put us in what I think is a potentially really powerful role to make positive change in these two areas. I'm happy to have this discussion and this opportunity to share my voice here, and I'm confident that service design is uniquely positioned to positively influence the world around us, and not only in these two ways I've just shared. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Jesse. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Mariano Alessandro from Copenhagen, from Index. Mariano, good to see you again. Please give us your presentation.
Hello, David, and hello, everybody. Thanks for the invitation and for being here. Yeah, but I mean, what can I say? For almost 20 years here at Index, what we have been doing is advocating for the power of design to be used as a tool to solve the world's biggest challenges, mainly through Index Award, right? That is what we call the design to improve life, right? Today we can see with the pandemic what the amount of the response. Remember when the pandemic began, we had this massive response from designers around the world coming together, bringing face shields, respirators, and whatever they could help people, from 3D printing to services to whatever you can imagine. Suddenly the world got populated by designers that were helping people as a rapid response, right? So this was showing everybody what design can do. Of course, now we have the climate, we have the health issue, but like Jesse is saying, also we have climate change, and we have a whole list of 17 goals, which already are not covering all of the problems that we're seeing. So today, more than ever, we have need for design, again, moving away from the pretty things, but actually using design methodologies to help people. And this is the time. So what I think that this is showing is an opportunity to redesign the world. So how is the world 4.0 going to look like? And from what we are doing at Index, when the crisis began, the pandemic began last year, we have a partner in Chile, the UDD, Universidad del Desarrollo, where we began working together and thinking, okay, we need to do something together. We need to create, we need to help people, we need to help Latin America, because we were working together there, and we had two different things. On the one hand, we wanted to help Latin American designers, stop looking up and stop looking to the side and begin looking inside and seeing what they have to offer. And this was a crisis that they could actually help. Because when we think of the pandemic, it's not just people getting sick and dying. It's all the different problems that the pandemic is bringing in a region in Latin America, like, for example, violence escalating, all kinds of issues. So we created a competition called Diseño Responde, Design Response, focused in Latin America, where we made it in a way pretty similar to the Index Award, using the same categories, body, home, work, and play and learning. also using the same concepts, looking at the form of the solutions, at the impact, at the context, and we spread it around all through Latin America. We are really happy with the results. I mean, we closed the nomination period at the end of the year, and we got 399 projects coming from 13 different countries in Latin America. And to us, this was a first, it was something that made us look that we need also to get to be more involved in what's going on. And I think this is also part of the influence, right? Of not just, I mean, we can talk about design, we can promote about design, we can invest, we can educate, but we also need to do it. We also need to be there on the floor and do stuff. For us, it was a realization of saying, okay, Diseño Responde, now it is responding to Corona, but we have a whole lot of goals that we need to solve. So this is the time to begin, okay, if you're a designer, what can you do? Well, you can help people. And this is the time, I think. Well, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm happy also that everybody is really paying attention to the time. We're really sticking to it. Thank you. That was very, very good. Our next speaker is Simon Widmer of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. Simon, good to see you. Please give us your presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for the invitation. And it's really good to see so many familiar faces again. I think it's a really important discussion and I'm glad to be part of it. I would like to touch on two topics in the 4 minutes. The first topic is, why is design instrumental towards a circular economy, and how does the circular economy help us address the challenges that we are facing today? And the second topic is, what are we as the Ellen MacArthur Foundation contributing on that journey? So to dive into the first topic, I don't have to tell you that today's model is very much like a take, make, waste model, and the symptoms of that we are seeing in many ways. Of course, we are seeing that in terms of waste and pollution. We also see it in an economic system that's not very resilient, and the social and economic consequences of that. So what we need to do is we need to move from addressing symptoms and end of pipe, dealing with the problems such as waste, to seeing the broader systems and moving upstream, moving to the root cause of the problems. And design is really instrumental in that. We need to understand the systems that we are designing for, whatever that is. Of course, we have multiple disciplines here in the room, but this systems understanding is really essential. And the circular economy can help us with that, because the circular economy is a system solutions framework, and it is a vision of an economy and a society that is resilient, that is also distributed and diverse, and that can work in the long term. Here, I think it's important to note that it's not just about cleaning up or recycling or a narrow kind of bending of the loop, but it's about thinking about systems and regeneration in a broader sense. Now, what are we doing on this, and how are we contributing? I would like to touch on 3 topics. One is the working with design leadership, then various groups of design practitioners, and then design students as 3 different audiences. And what we can see overall is that over the last year, or a bit more than a year actually, since we last met, this has really gained momentum in the design audiences that we are interacting with. So when it comes to design leaders, we see now that chief design officers of some of the largest organizations are actively working towards strategies to work towards solutions that are more resilient. We have a group of chief design officers that are convening around the circular economy agenda now, and they are working to shift not just like one individual products, but entire business models. Outside of the corporate arena, we also see design leaders and influencers that are making steps forward on this agenda. So we had design agencies ranging from Frog, Fjord, McKinsey, and IDEO all coming together around one table and speaking at an event last summer about the importance of design in the circular economy. And beyond that, we also see it as part of major design weeks, such as the London Design Festival, where various stakeholders across the whole spectrum of society are speaking about what design can do in the context of a more regenerative economy. Now, in terms of practitioners, how we see that this is being driven in really important industries across the board, but in particular, we are closely involved in plastics, fashion, and food. In plastics, we have just released a toolkit and a resource that helps various design practitioners in addressing the plastics problem. And there's more than 100 solutions that are featured in that resource of elimination, reuse models, entirely new ways of designing for a less wasteful model. And in fashion, to give you another example, we have now, by May, we will have the first 2 million jeans that are redesigned for a circular economy model. So we have a project called Jeans Redesign, where the whole supply chain is working on new models. And I want to emphasize, it's not just about product design here. It's really critical that across the disciplines, we're working together to find new solutions to the needs that we have as humans. It's also a broader agenda that's driven by community. So we see communities organizing design challenges around this topic and sharing that on social media. And just to come to the last point, on the students front, we see that this is really something that students are burning for. Together with CUMULUS, we have organized a design challenge, or inputted, actually, I have to say, into a design challenge organized by CUMULUS around the circular economy. And we had more than 600 solutions and submissions from students from all over the world, so from more than 100 universities. So to summarize, this is a topic that is really important, and we see a lot of momentum in the design community towards solutions that fit within systems, reimagining and using the power of design to design for an economy and society that can really work in the long term. Thank you again, and if this is of interest to you, we have an article about our view on the link between design and the circular economy and how it can address the challenges we are facing on our Circulate News webpage. It's a short article. You can also find it on our social media. Thank you very much again, and I'm really happy to be part of this.
Thank you, Simon. Our final speaker is Morten Nielsen from IFHP, and following his presentation, Päivi, you'll pick it up to do a bit of a wrap up. Please, Morten.
Thank you very much. My name is Morten Nielsen. I'm the CEO of the International Federation for Housing and Planning, speaking from Copenhagen in Denmark. IFHP could address many of the topics on the agenda today, but I would like to use my speaking time to put forward one practical suggestion, and that is measure what matters. The obvious question following this is then, what matters? Well, as we find ourselves in the second COVID-19 wave, we are all reminded of what matters, of the fundamental importance of well-designed, decent housing and inclusive communities. It is vital for us humans to live a social life, meet neighbors, colleagues, friends, and family. Our quality of life is defined by access to healthcare, good jobs, quality housing, and access to clean air, fresh water, nature, and shared spaces. All of these things do not happen by themselves. Decent housing and livable and inclusive communities require deliberate design of governance systems in the areas of social, environment, and economy. The International Federation for Housing and Planning, IFHP, was founded in 1913, more than 100 years ago, by Ebenezer Howard, with a mission to provide for exactly these fundamentals: decent housing, green surroundings, and well-designed livable communities. And as of today, in 2021, we at IFHP continue to be inspired by the pursuit of well-designed communities. With urban populations growing by millions, it is more important than ever to focus on the human right to decent housing and sustainable cities. And one, not the only one, but one specific success factor that can help make our vision reality is measure what matters and use metrics to facilitate deliberate and targeted design choices in the pursuit of decent housing and inclusive cities. IFHP has since 2016 been working to design a measurement tool, a system of metrics for this purpose, to help urban decision makers design and plan decent housing and inclusive communities. We call it the Social Cities Index. The index gauges social sustainability on 3 levels or scales: household, neighborhood, and the city. And with specific, well-defined and standardized measures at hand, we are better able to design and construct decent housing and inclusive cities based on agreed data and measurable facts. And in our quest to build environmentally sustainable cities and achieve economic prosperity, design makers have already benefited from well-defined measurement and management tools, gauging environmental and economic metrics. Now, we at IFHP suggest doing exactly the same for the design and human-centered, for the design of human-centered and social solutions for the development of decent housing and the creation of social cities. So let's do what they have done in the environmental and economic sector. Let's do the same for design and human-centered social solutions. Measuring what matters is important because it creates common ground, a common understanding of systemic weakness and strength points, of risk and opportunities. In this way, it enables a fact-driven and data-driven process for designing decent housing and inclusive social cities. Or put it in another way, by measuring what matters, you get to design things, homes, and systems that matter to people. Or even simpler, what gets measured gets done, also when it comes to designing housing and planning. So thank you for listening. I look forward to the discussions. And if you want to learn more about our Social Cities Index and IFHP, you are invited to join the organization. Memberships are open to all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I have to say that this was a highly interesting set of inputs, great speakers. And of course, I'm very proud as president of MEDEA to have the opportunity to wrap this up a bit. I will start with Mariana's input. She said that influence is to ascertain one's perspective, but turned upside down, it also is about provoking change. A very interesting approach, and obviously something we all are very much interested in. Complexity obviously was and operating in systems, operating in collaboration was mentioned. And here I have to say that to a large degree, all speakers touched the same issue: complexity, systemic approach, and of course, taking up the global challenges we are tackling at the moment. And obviously also that we are tackling global challenges, and all of you are touching this issue is also a reason why all these organizations are here, and you as experts are all here today. The necessity for us together to start solving global solutions. Jesse talked about service design and the context of service design. It was very interesting what Jesse said about a shift in thinking of the framework and context. The way he said that the focus on the organization, within the organization, to have an impact on of service design, the shift to have an impact more outside the organizations, again related to the global challenges, sustainability and climate change related, social injustice, equality or inclusivity, very, very much touched by all of you speakers. Mariana Alessandro from Index. Index, of course, has been tackling these issues for more than 20 years already. Pandemics has showed what design can do. And it was also very interesting the way Mariano described the case study in Latin America. Enormous number of projects came up through the competition they organized in Latin America. He also said something very important. We can talk, we can educate, etc., but we also need to do it. So not only the discussion on what should be, but also the discussion and the actions on what needs to get done. Simon Widmer, Ellen MacArthur Foundation. Why is design instrumental in climate change mitigation? And what he said, very importantly, it's important that from addressing symptoms, we can get to the root causes. Again, he talked about systems, understanding the systemic approach, and how important and necessary understanding systemic approach is. It's not about cleaning up, recycling, it's about regeneration in a broader sense, and specifically the importance of creating a regenerative economy. He also described what they do in practical terms. Maybe what's important to note is, again, the work across disciplines. And of course, the collaboration with CUMULUS was mentioned. So putting together professionals with educational sector and research. Morten Nielsen of IFHP, very important message, measure what matters. And of course, what he immediately said is that you have to define what matters. From his point of view, it means decent housing, social life, access to services, and what is required are well-developed systems and approaches. Measurement tools are developed. He specifically mentioned that the tool is related to 3 levels, from households to neighborhoods to city. And an important message at the end of his input, what gets measured gets done. What I would like to sort of wrap up in my final part is that it's obvious that there is a shift taking place in design world, generally speaking, not only in certain environments, but globally as well. We are creating, and we have created, a shift towards systemic understanding and towards our need to have a strong humanistic approach to start solving and continue solving global challenges. Obviously, at this moment, climate change is one of the most important ones. And the pandemic during the year or so has woken up to the reality that new challenges can come up at any time. And we need to be prepared to start solving them as well. So I would say that it's clear, based on the speeches, that a shift from also from the pragmatic level to a more systemic and global level is obviously taking place. And I'm sure that this is very much welcomed by the rest of the society as well. Thank you on my behalf. And I will now ask, let me see, Jeff to continue with the last session.
Thank you, Bobby. It's nice to be with everybody today. I'm going to kick this discussion off talking a little bit about who influences design. And in my career, largely working with local governments, it's been mayors. And we created something years ago called the Mayor's Institute on City Design, which I think is a good example of how you can influence urban form by getting the elected officials involved. We also have advocated something called design guidelines. I'm sure many of the cities that all of our participants are from have some kinds of design guidelines, but design guidelines remind me of Winston Churchill's famous remark, we shape our buildings, although I would substitute places. We shape our places and then they shape us. A lot of the speakers have indicated the kind of interaction between design and human behavior, and certainly that is an important aspect of urban planning and urban design. In the United States, most of the action is at the local level, although there are a couple, I'll mention a couple of policy issues in terms of design influence at the federal level, mostly from the 1964 Historic Preservation Act, which was a radical change brought about by the destruction of several important landmarks, and then also the Environmental Protection Act, which includes programs to provide local governments with money for environmental cleanup, and then lastly, transportation. Transportation, of course, influences urban form dramatically and can be very productive, or it can be very disastrous. And in the United States, of course, we had a crazy period where we built nothing but highways and forgot that walking was actually a form of transportation. But luckily, Daniel Patrick Moynihan in the early 90s changed that almost single-handedly with a transportation bill that was much more robust in terms of alternatives. So I would say that urban policy is one of the things that we need to think about. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to IxDA, who will be our first presenter.
Thank you, Jeff. Good to see you back after a while. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you all. I feel privileged today to be here with you all and also be part of the Montreal Design Declaration. I'm Ishtiaq from Bangladesh, representing UIA, International Union of Architects. The UIA is the only global organization representing the world's architects more than 70 years. The UIA unites the architects from more than 120 countries with the strength of diversity and partnership. The architects are the trained design professional who leads the process of implementing the Sustainable Development Goal into our cities and settlement by 2030. And it's through the designing the built environment of the future. So since the inception of SDG in 2015, the UIA president as lead partner of World Urban Campaign and ECOSOC member of UN, we made several calls during Habitat 3, World Urban Forum, and World Architecture Day on the role of architects in influencing the people's life through producing quality design. We pledge to build better cities for the benefit of all people while conserving our resources and using them wisely. So as the designer, the architect has an important role to play in ensuring that the design process can reach all the levels of government and brings all the actors together. Furthermore, through design, architects influence the citizen on how to act responsibly. Architects are the crux of the design built environment, whose influence and the implementation of the new urban agenda by 2030. So through quality planning and design, we can combat inequality in society, effectuate quality urban growth, achieve quality accessible design, and innovate new models of housing options for informal settlements and promote co-sharing solutions for affordable housing. The quality design can catalyze urban regeneration, create socially and culturally inclusive space, and promote greening of cities. There are also 4 other aspects that I'd like to discuss as an influencer of design. These are qualitative and quantitative data that has to be collected for the design, good design. The participated in collaborative process of including physical, cultural, social identities that define a place. Then third, the right to design has to be established for both formal and informal sector as co-planner, co-creator to achieve SDG. Last comes the people and the places are the most influencer of design. We must be responsive to people, place, ecology, culture, heritage, climate, disaster risk reduction process, and we must build well and we must build for all people. I'd like to mention a few architects around the globe who recently showcased some real-life creative solution for sustainable communities by design. Like Lenegger Group from Copenhagen, designed 17 US SDG eco-village in Copenhagen. The UK's first affordable ecological co-housing project, Lilac, by design, White Design. And lastly, French architect Goulart, winning design of self-sufficient post-COVID city in China. Finally, as influencer of design, Union of International Architects consistently organizing design competition through its ICC commission. In parallel, UIA SDG commission, where me and my colleague from Copenhagen, Natalie, are the co-chairs. We are processing and launching an UIA 2030 award on UN SDG during our UIA Congress in July 2021 in Rio. We also published the second book. This is the first book we already published one. This is in our website that showcase design that contribute to 17 SDG goals. Architects Next Triennial Summit UIA Copenhagen 2030 will take place in Denmark. The theme is the 17 SDG goal. I invite you all to join us. At the end, the UIA acknowledged that the built environment is a part of the problem. But through potential of planning and design, it is also a crucial part of the solution. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Ishtak. Now the floor belongs to Min Wang. Please join us.
First, thanks for the invitation for me to participate in today's event. Today, I'm not representing any design organizations, but speaking on behalf of some organizations in China that are interested to work with you, the international design organizations, for creating opportunities that will influence millions, if not billions of people. The social and environmental issues raised by Montreal Design Declaration are relevant to what we concern and what we work on in China today. I have witnessed and participated the remarkable and the incredible growth of the design industry in China in the past 40 years. From almost no designer at all to today's 17 million designers. From less than 1,000 students study design when I was in college in 1978 to today over 2 million students study design at any given time. But not so long ago, in 2009, when I was the key person organizing the EcoGrada Congress, and the first year of Beijing Design Week, we have had such difficulties because the value of design was almost unknown. In recent years, things are so much better. For instance, the Zhuhai Design Week, which I helped to establish, took only a few months' time to prepare and to start. And we had a successful design week in Zhuhai running for the last 3 years. So from my experience in design education, in design promotion, I realized we do need more design influencers to make change and to release the power of design. After the 2009 ICOGRADA Congress in Beijing, which quite few in today's meeting were participated and also part of the organization effort. After 2009 ICOGRADA Congress, we have seen the government pay more attention on design. A national design policy, which we have drafted in 2004, finally put into place in 2011, partially because the 2009 Congress and then the first Beijing Design Week in that year. Now, each year, Beijing Design Week has over 1,000 events and exhibitions, drawn millions of visitors and create economic opportunities and also stimulates social innovations and improve people's life. After Zhuhai Design Week, a city design center has been launched. A program to attract design talent has launched, and a design education network has launched as well. Now the pandemic brought a strong awareness to all of us that the design should and can make difference if we all have the ideal, have the drive, and have the action, working toward a common goal that is designed for the oneness of humanity. Thank you.
Man, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to a time when I can travel again and see all my old friends in China. The next speaker is Christina Melander. Could you join us, Christina?
I'm here. I'm joining you from north of Copenhagen in Denmark, in my bedroom, obviously today, as we are many people in this house as due to lockdown. So when I got the question, who are the key design influences in advancing design, what first of all popped into my mind was alliances, partnerships, and ecosystems. Because I think when we talk about who really has a role here, is not a one-man job, or there is not a certain key actor. Maybe this is a banal view, but this is a combination of many different actors in an ecosystem. So when we talk about the ecosystem and kind of what is the headlines of those roles, policymakers who are really driving change, who can stimulate change, who can set up programs, promoters of design, which is what all of you have talked about, so, and also Mariano, awards, museums, media, weeks and festivals. It's of course education and research. It is design professional sector, design sector itself, of course. It's the so-called, what I call the design bias, whether this is industry, public sector, and it's the funding. So I think all these kind of headlines together is the ecosystem. And if we really want to advance things today, the more complex things change, the faster things change, we need to work in ecosystems. And I think that is key. And I think, so the key role today is actually how we really can stimulate that. And one thing is then in Denmark, where I am, we actually do a lot to really facilitate and build a strong and consolidated ecosystem around design. But we have to make sure that we are not just talking in our own community. We need to build even stronger communities and alliances and ecosystems when we combine design with sustainability, with digitalization, with social innovation. And I think what really strikes me, and more or less all of you have said it, the time is now, even though it is painful with the pandemic. But it is interesting because when we are really disrupted and really, really challenged, this is when the creative nerve is so needed. And I think it's the best opportunity we have had for many years. My fear can be, if I could be a little bit like that, it is for so many years we have worked to promote, measure the impact of design, really try to convince people from outside our ecosystem of the benefits and potential of design. But now the world are actually looking towards us. And I'm just saying, are we up for the challenge? Can we, I love when I hear Marianne talk about the projects in Chile and the mass of that, but can we actually really change and build on this opportunity? Because I think it is so true. No more talk, doing. We have the capability as a system to make the future very tangible for others to understand. And I was a little late today because I actually just hosted a seminar with 40 heads of design agencies in Denmark, where we really talked about what should we do? What are the projects we need to do now? Yeah, we will work on also measuring the value of design. But what do we need to put in place right now? And I think in that discussion, the key actors in this ecosystem is our policymakers. They are super, super, super important. Design has been high on the political agenda in Denmark for more than 20 years. And we really need to make sure they are part of this ecosystem and change that, because they can stimulate change. And for us in Europe, right now, we're looking towards the EU Commission, who recently launched a project called the New European Bauhaus, but inspired by the Bauhaus movement. We now want to use that methodology and movement as an inspiration of how we can accelerate changes within climate changes and within renovation in Europe. So that's my point. Partnerships and alliances. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christina. That was a good insight. And now I'd like to ask Andrea Mignolo to join us, please.
All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm joining you all from Regitze land, which is today known as San Francisco, and I'm very honored to be joining you, sharing the perspective from IxDA. IxDA came together in 2005 to shape the then emergent field of interaction design. As a US-based not-for-profit, IxDA has always been very unique in its approach to community. We are a global organization run almost entirely by volunteers. The concept of membership does not exist for us, nor does a singular definition of what it means to practice interaction design. Our viewpoint is purposely global and pluralistic, something we intend to continue fostering in the 21st century. Currently, our funding comes primarily from our yearly conference known as Interaction Week. Our event model mirrors the ethos of the organization. Each year, the event is held in a different city, alternating back and forth between North America and Europe. We also have a yearly interaction conference in Latin America that also moves amongst countries and cities. The reason for this movement is that each year an entirely new team of volunteers takes on the daunting task of running the conference. Through an application process steeped in place and praxis, applicant teams pitch their lens on the state of affairs in the world of interaction design. I share this history of IxDA not to be long-winded, but to point to our reason for being. We are by the community for the community. And then in this light, it was somewhat at odds with our values and ethos to think about or try to anoint influencers. We aim to raise voices from around the world, and we're seeking a de-guruification of how and by whom design is made and done. We ask that you look to our past conferences, Interaction Week, Interaction Latin America, and World Interaction Design Day, to see the themes and voices that have reflected our pluralistic global viewpoint over the years. For us as an organization, we will continue to support a multiplicity of collective voices that are challenging and changing how we understand design, what role design can play, and how design can become more inclusive and equitable. IxDA is a place where the emergent meets the established on equal footing. Design, like digital transformation, is finding its way into new contexts and disciplines. A year ago in Milan, our conference theme was A New Dawn, where we intentionally reached out to other disciplines to inform and expand our views of the practice. Ours is a porous organization where we seek to explore edges rather than define ourselves through boundaries of exclusion and hierarchies. Rather than with individuals, real influence rests in the collective. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see our next speaker is getting ready to join us. Lydia, would you regale us with your ideas?
Hello, good afternoon. At least here, it's afternoon. I would like to thank you for the invitation and for the opportunity for ASF International to be able to discuss these such important matters with all of you. As architects, that's our point of view for now. Design is architecture, vocabulary, language, tools, whatever we want to call it. So although we consider architecture a very powerful instrument, and we consider that maybe it's not used at its full power. If we consider that a huge part of the world probably never heard about architecture or never ever had the opportunity to actually use it, and these people usually see architecture as an added value, but mostly as an artistic or economical point of view. So we consider that our mission is to underline that architecture has many added values, and but for sure more important than those. And for instance, I think that more than important, they're needed. So I would like to underline the word need in the actual world. So if we can imagine a world where while an architect is studying a space and before he draws it and while he's mediating with the other actors, he actually considers that all of his lines have an impact, have this space that he's considering as an impact, a really strong impact on society and environmental aspects. I think that maybe planet would be very grateful to us. So of course that COVID made it very clear, although I do believe that it was very clear before, but it has underlined it. And probably now that we are more easily, we add people to this question, it's even more clear if we get to this point. So our work has been to underline the during this crisis that since we work for communities and with communities, like for instance, Morten Nielsen underlined, 2020 has completely underlined again and again and again. Actually, you knew it before, but 2020 has underlined that there are fundamental needs and rights that we cannot just forget they exist. So actually it doesn't matter what you draw, but the process you go to do it, and more important than that, the purpose and how you do it. So of course, teaching architecture for us, it's a very important step. because it's mandatory that it becomes more concerned with reality, because it's completely disconnected with reality. And so we consider that what we do has a completely and fundamental impact in every time we think of putting a line in the paper or in the computer nowadays. We should consider that it has a content, a social content, an environment content, a political content, whatever content, economic. I always try to forget it on purpose. So we must use it. We actually must use it. So if architecture, or if we consider that design in our profession is such a powerful tool, and it's so important to change people's life conditions, we cannot lose for this opportunity that this crisis gave us to actually help improve. So we consider that this network organization, I mean us here today, really have a strong opportunity to make things happen. So first of all, of course, we have to consider that we have to work with others, and I think that's completely common sense. But if we really want to succeed, and I'm not as optimistic as Jesse Grimes, I think that the world has changed, but the mindset actually still didn't. So I think that's where we really need to act, and that we can become an influence if we also understand the change. And for that matter, ASF International in the last months has been really focused on signing MOUs with universities and organizations that can provide us data and measurements that make our work better, because everything is new. So if we don't keep updated, and if we don't keep on measuring and considering whatever is changing, we are not using the useful data. So besides that, and asking all of you to really consider doing something, I think the word nowadays is to act. There's lots of opinions and conditions and research. We really need to act. And we as organization are really focused on new architects, because it's an opportunity to change their mindset to and easier. Thank you very much. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. And I hope we can improve a lot our part in actions.
Great, thank you very much. Our last speaker in this group is Christian Guerin, and after that, my partner in this session, Fleming, is going to come on and wrap up. That's what he's been doing while I've been introducing people, is busily taking notes. So Christian, take it away.
Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and maybe good night for some of you, wherever you are. I'm talking from west of France. So as curious as it is, I'm going to talk about marketing. And I'm going to talk about marketing and design and the evolvement we are attending nowadays. One of the major radical shifts of context we pass through is the emerging of an ecological consciousness of the consumers right now. We call it the consumer social responsibility. And this CSR will deeply change marketing and moreover business in the years to come. It's obvious. We are going to pass from a marketing of consumption to a marketing of contribution, where the consumers will be more and more engaged in terms of responsibility in what she consumes in terms of the saving the planet concept. The consumer wants to be engaged in saving the planet and to be considered as a sort of a Noah of the modern times. That means we are going to pass from a marketing based on needs and sales to a marketing based on experience and sense. And I do feel that marketing will be replaced by design. Design will take the place in the companies obliged to change of models. I really consider that design will replace marketing. And we need it. I mean, socially, we need it. And we have a great opportunity. It's an opportunity for the designer to occupy the top strategic position of marketing and to pilot the strategy of production and sales in the years to come. That means top strategic position for designers in companies which will be obliged to work on their societal image. It is the interest of companies, it's the business of tomorrow, it is the interest of the society, it's the interest of the planet and humankind. Once again, we are going to pass from a marketing based on needs and sales to a marketing based on service, experience, and sense. So, innovation, experience, sense. In one word, this is design. And relating to design education, which is my job, we absolutely prepare our students to assume such a shift in terms of skills and moreover in terms of professional projection. It is essential for design, for designers, and more than that, for the society. This is my talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian. Now I'm going to turn it over to my co-host, Fleming Waterstock.
Here we are.
There he is.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I will wrap up by touching upon two issues. The first one is that I'm not going to try to cherry pick on your brilliant, the brilliant speakers. We have had 6 speakers here who have shared their brilliant thoughts with us in this session. What I will do is I have taken notes during this process and try to extract it, and then we have decided in the steering committee to put it on the website designdeclaration.org. But let me take the opportunity to thank all 6 of you. That has been such a pleasure to listen to you. The second issue I would like to touch upon wrapping up is taking the kind of departure in who is instrumental in advancing design. I think we all can agree that design must be for people. Design for people, that's the short sentence. I think many of you have touched upon that. But design is done by people, so trying to put in a short sentence, I would advocate that we have to have people for design. And who are these people? Who are these design leaders? Who are these to talk about, a restaurant or a kitchen or a cook? Who are the chefs of this leadership? And I think it's a tri-sectorial kind of thinking. And I think, first of all, I would argue that we need the thought leaders. Many of you have touched upon that too. You could also call them the philosophers, the people that are evolving, developing, innovating what design is, asking the right questions about design. The second group of leadership would be what I call the policymakers, but also the practitioners, doing the right things in the right way. And I agree with many of you that now is the time to do things in the right way. But if we haven't had these philosophers, trying to inspire us on how to do things the right way, I would argue that we are without a compass. Then the third group would be the passionate people, the grassroots that Lisa Nunez talked very much about. I think that's very important. We have to remember that we should not be allowed to, skip them, because involving people who care, I think that will become more and more important. I think Christian Guillerin also spoke about that, from marketing actually to doing things. So that would be my take. This tri-sector leadership, I think we will have to focus on that, because it's the leaders that are going to change the world tomorrow. And we know the leaders of today, and it's up to the educational sector trying to educate and develop the students that are in their educations right now. So that would be my thoughts, and thank you for that. Back to
thank you, Fleming.
Yeah.
Thanks, Fleming, and thanks, Jeff, for co-moderating this, and thank you to all the speakers. It's fascinating. I haven't seen such a self-disciplined crowd in terms of timings, so I would like to congratulate all of you, and I'll ask Brenda Sanderson to take over and share some insights.
Thank you, Alok. I will say thank you for the opportunity. And as some of my colleagues know, it's not at all terrifying for my first task on a Thursday to listen to the input from a group of 20 international colleagues and try and provide some coherent insights after 2 hours. Nonetheless, as I said, as we age, we learn that terrifying doesn't go away. You just work through it. So here we go. I think the interesting thing in bringing this group together today is it's very clear that the pandemic, while not our only global challenge, has given us a platform to have conversations around shared global challenges and revealed both commonalities and constraints. It's surfaced weaknesses and inequities that I think it was Jesse who touched on in his comments, that if we were having this conversation a year ago, might be framed differently. So as I listen to this group today, we talk about access and inclusion and accessibility and allyship in ways that perhaps we wouldn't have a year ago. So to see those themes surface is really heartening. I like to think about it as, a path towards maturity. So I will put one provocation on the table. A couple of us have made the assertion that design as a practice is young. And I would challenge us to think about that, because while the label and the framing for what we talk about as design right now may be newer, designing is not new. And that is perhaps a weakness of our collective conversation, that we are missing the voices and the indigenous knowledge to contribute to what are the ways of working, the ways of being, and the ways of designing that exist in our shared history that perhaps we're not paying as much attention to at the moment as we could. And by that, I mean, not just bringing forward the knowledge, but bringing forward the people who can share that knowledge and giving the floor and the voice to them for us to listen and learn. Certainly, technology has enabled inclusion and access. Without, Zoom as a platform or one of its competitors, we wouldn't be able to do this today. But as Essam touched on, it has challenged us and revealed inequities in terms of access and inclusion and ways of teaching that we didn't anticipate. So it is on us to adapt and iterate. And I think at the same time, certainly as an interaction designer, it is also on us to understand that as designers, we're both accountable and complicit in creating those inequities and differences. So I liken it a little bit to moving from being young and seeing the potential as we might have talked about design a few years ago to now understanding our role as mature participants and being accountable for our actions and owning not only that we can create positive change, but that we have contributed to the challenges that we have in front of us. So I would think about, we've talked about, certainly if we trace a path for design, it has been designed by and then designed with. The challenge that I would leave us to think about is how do we, as a couple of people have highlighted, how do we release the potential of design? So perhaps it is the moment for us as design organizations and those of us who are, administrators or managers of design communities to decenter ourselves as the voice of knowledge and enable the capacity and the confidence in our communities and individuals as the collective to design futures. So that's a little bit different way of framing, if I think as we go forward, and I'm going to turn it over to David to talk about some of the conversations we've been having as a steering committee to bring it back to the design declaration. If we want to say that, and we believe that we want to activate that everyone deserves to live in a well-designed world, that everyone has to be a collective understanding and not simply driven by the designers as actors in that engagement. So with that, I'll turn it over to David.
Thank you, Brenda. And just a few final words about the design declaration effort going forward. Since Montreal, the steering committee, which is a voluntary framework, which includes representatives of 6 of the declaration signers, we've been setting a course forward. Many of you participated in the successful meeting we had in Saint-Étienne, and that broadened our effort, bringing new people on board. And we have been establishing project management groups to drive forward some of the projects that were listed in the design declaration. And through a survey, we recognized those that are critical, and many of them came up in the discussion today. The focus on the need for metrics, measurements, the focus on the need for driving policy that recognizes the importance of design forward, and of course, design education and research. Now, the idea was to have a physical summit meeting every 2 or 3 years, a cycle, and we've been working to recruit a host city for the next physical summit meeting. The COVID crisis put a bit of a stop to that, or a freeze on that, because of all the confusion and the halt in travel and the lack of clarity. But now that we're beginning to see the light at the end of the tunnel, we are in fact in advanced discussions with some candidates about hosting another physical meeting at the end of this year. And hosting a physical meeting has all sorts of implications, not only in terms of allocation of resources that makes such progress possible, but it's a point in time that we work for in order to go forward. So we hope to have news about that in the very near future. Now, at a physical summit, of course, we have the opportunity to meet again, to continue our journey. And at a physical summit, a new declaration will be issued. The Montreal Design Declaration was very general, giving a very overarching view of the role of design, the potential of design, and listing many, many topics. The future declarations will be each will be more narrowly focused, so that we can go more into depth in some of these topics. Now, following this virtual event, the steering committee will consider the outcomes. And I think we've had a very profitable 2 hours. And we hope to conduct additional virtual meetings that will be stepping stones for a physical summit meeting, and will also be part of a drafting process for the next declaration. And we really look forward to your further participation, and especially feedback that we already have from what we've heard in these 2 hours, and what we hope we will continue to receive, that will feed and inform the steering committee going forward. So that's how we go forward. I think we will be meeting virtually, I hope, in the near future, and physically, I hope within the year. Personally, I'd like to thank all our participants, and I'd like to thank all the steering committee members, and particularly Regitze and Alok, who led the preparations for this event. So Alok, I turn it over back to you, and thank you to all of you.
Thank you, David, and thank you, Brenda and David, for having us landed in these 2 dense hours. I would also like to thank IFHP for providing us the infrastructure, the Zoom account and related logistics. And I would like to thank IxDA doing some work behind the scene in terms of web hosting and all these infrastructure items. What is important, and it has been stated quite often, is this pluralistic approach that we need to push upon. And thanks, Andy, to remind us about that. And I'll keep one word here: doing, 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 doing. That is the essence of what is the future that we are all looking as a collaborative group. And DD stands for Design Declaration. DD stands now for Design Doing. So stay tuned and check designdeclaration.org, where we'll be updating some stuff, where we will be inviting you to contribute and help us doing together. And thanks to all the speakers, thanks to all the contributors, thanks to the attendees for having spent time with us, and keep an eye on designdeclaration.org. And I'll pass now the floor to Regitze.
Thank you very much. From the engine room, it's been my privilege to be following you, tracking your diligence in keeping time, tracking all the chat who's coming in from different places in the world. So a great shout out to our audience, a great shout out to the voices and your sharing of voices, a shout out to the steering committee, and a shout out to my co-chair, Alok, and of course, a shout out to my own backyard, IFHP. And with this, it's my privilege to say it's a wrap, over and out. We will save the Zoom and share it with you subsequently. So a big wave.
Thank you, everyone, and see you soon, virtually and physically. Ciao, ciao.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Namaste.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. I just dropped for the end. Bye.
Gracias.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.